Hello students, we are in chapter number 10. Book is known as the Fundamentals of Human Geography, and the chapter's name is Human Settlements. This is the first part of the two parts this chapter is in. In order to keep the video short, I have divided this into two parts. Now remember there's another chapter with the same name, it's Human Settlements, and that happens to be a chapter number 4 in the book known as India, People and Economy. The difference is in that chapter, which you have already learned, the point of view was from economics of a village or uh, either a rural area or an urban area. But here we are talking in the sense of the fundamentals of human geography. That is the difference. Now, you all know that the definition of human settlement is a cluster of houses. Uh, and this cluster of houses is known as human settlements. And it also has to be something which is more or less permanent. If it is, if it is so, then we could call it a human settlement. We may call it a village if it is a small size, or if the population is less, or if the people depend mainly on primary activities, or if the size of the settlement is huge, if the houses are very tightly packed together, if the population is large, and if it has got administrative setup, and the people depend on secondary or tertiary activities, we call them as town or cities. The buildings or houses may change in design or function over a period of time, but the settlement remains the same. Uh, if you just consider your own city, you'll see new buildings coming up, but they are very much within the city. The old buildings are also there; they are demolished and new construction comes up in their place. So we say that the buildings or houses may change in design, yet they may also change in function. One building which is used now for one function might have been used by the same people of the same town earlier for something else. And the reason why we study human settlements is because it enables us to study the relationship between human beings and environment. Now, we'll talk about the classification of settlements. Dichotomy means what you call the differences, and what exactly is a village or a town. And in the chapter 4 of your other book, main concern was about the population and about the economic activity. Now, here we cannot take population alone as a universal criteria, because many villages in densely populated countries, they have different definition for a town or a city than some other place like Finland, for example. The population density, if it is 250, they consider that to be a city. So the population cannot be taken as a basis because the definition changes from place to place. And remember, in this textbook, we are talking about the human beings of the world. We are not talking about economy of India. That is the difference. The second criterion is in developed countries, large sections of the urban population prefer to live in villages, even though they work in a city. If they are working in a city and if they are living in villages, they commute, they travel between their residence and place of work. That happens a lot in developed countries. People travel large distances, 70 kilometers, 100 kilometers. For them, it's only a matter of few minutes or an hour at most. But in developing countries and in underdeveloped countries, traveling 70 kilometers requires 3 hours and some more time for preparation in one direction. The basic difference between town and village is that in towns, the main occupation of the people is related to secondary and tertiary sectors of economy. Secondary sectors, as you know, is manufacturing, and tertiary sector is services. Often you have quaternary sector, that is research and development activities, so on and so forth. In the villages, most of the people are engaged in primary occupation like agriculture, like fisheries, like animal husbandry, or poultry farming, or mining, etc. That is the difference between primary occupation and secondary and tertiary occupations. Now, you already know what is suburbanization. The cities, the urban areas are usually more congested. They, because of congestion, they also end up being dirtier. The traffic is more. It requires a lot of efforts and time to travel a short distance. That is the reason for working. It's fine, but if for living, no. People they tend to move out of cities. They don't go too far away. So suburban areas developed. Every day, thousands of people commute from their homes in the suburbs to their workplace in cities. Now, why do we differentiate on the basis of functions? Because there is no uniformity in the hierarchy of functions provided by rural and urban settlements. Even then, it is more meaningful to differentiate rural and urban settlements on the basis of functions. Rating of functions may vary depending on the regional economy within a country or between two countries. Also, the facilities available in the village in a developed country may be very rare in developing or less developed countries. Remember, we are not talking just about the condition in India, we're talking about the condition universally. This also, you know, what is the definition of an urban settlement? What do you call as an urban settlement? As per the census of India, now this, sorry, you have learned this in chapter 4 of the other book. But just to repeat, all the places which have municipality or municipal corporation or cantonment board or notified town area committee, and if it has got a population of at least 5,000 people, and of these 5,000 people, if the males which are there, if more than 75% of the male population are engaged in secondary and tertiary activities, that is non agricultural or not primary activities, economic activities, and the population density is at least 400 people per square kilometer, then such a settlement is known as urban settlement. These 4 points are important for your examination. Just make sure you understand them and you remember them. They are very easy to understand and they are very easy to remember as well. Now we look at the types and patterns of settlement. We have two types: compact or nucleated settlement or dispersed settlement. Now, if the settlement is nucleated or compact, you have houses which are located close together. That means when we say the houses being located close together, the built-up area of the house may be more. If it is a two-story or three-story house, or even if it is single-story house, but the it contains maybe rooms or four rooms, and spread over some, let us say, 700 or 800 square feet or 1,000 square feet. That's large enough for a good family, large size family also. But when you're talking about compactness, we are talking about the distance between two houses which are adjacent to each other. Because in nucleated or compact settlements, this distance between two houses is less. That is, the boundary area of the house is not big. You don't have a lot of land in front of your house. That's the meaning. These settlements are those in which large numbers of houses are built very close to each other, and such settlements develop along river valleys or in fertile plains, where actually there's a competition for living there. People pay more money for that. People who can afford to pay more money because the land is scarce, and it's also something to do with economics. And when you say that there's a relationship between demand and supply, if the demand is more, people want to settle down there, but the land is not there. People are willing to pay higher money for that. That happens in the fertile plains and in river valleys, and the communities inhabiting them there are closely knit and share common occupations. In contrast, this is dispersed settlement. There is open space between houses, and often you find agricultural fields between houses. So, the dispersed settlements have houses which are spaced far apart, and they often have fields in between them. Then, what binds this settlement together are places of common interest, such as market or places of worship, like temples or mosques or churches, etc. Now, we look at the rural settlements closely. These are more closely and directly related to land because they are depending on land, depending on primary activities. And such primary activities dominate in rural settlements. The activities can be agriculture, it can be animal husbandry, it can be fishing, it can be mining, anything to do with the four domains of Earth, that is lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, and biosphere. Which, if you're dealing with them directly, you call them as primary activities. The population of rural settlements is relatively small. The factors affecting rural settlements are water supply. Of course, if water supply is not there, people will not settle down there. This is more true and more easily seen in places which are already having a scarce water supply. For example, the Thar Desert in Rajasthan. There are habitations, there are settlements there, but all the settlements are near sources of water. The second is land. What kind of land? What quality? What is the quality of land? Upland is the slope or the levees. We're talking about topography there or relief. Then the building material which is commonly available in that locality. Then defense is the security you find yourself in, and of course the degree of planning of settlements. Now let's look at them one by one. Water is the basic necessity for life, and rural settlements are usually located near water bodies in such a way that a person doesn't have to toil too much to obtain little water. The need of water is so great that sometimes people even overlook other disadvantages of the place. Example, if it's a swampy place or low lying bank, but if the water is available, people prefer to live there. Just imagine that one single hand pump is sustaining a population of people around it. And also imagine that if this hand pump goes dry, then the people will have to move out from there or find out some other alternative arrangement for drinking water. The second thing we depend on is land, or rather, land which is fertile and suitable for agriculture. If you look at Europe, you can find villages developed near rolling countryside, uh, and usually the swampy areas are avoided. In Southeast Asia, people choose to live near low-lying river valleys and coastal plains because they grow a lot of crops which are depending on good supply of water. For example, is rice. Paddy requires a lot of water. This photograph is to show that rural settlements depend on land. The quality of land enables you to grow certain crops. Now, uplands are highlands which are not prone to flooding. Nobody would like to live in a place where you're afraid of being you're losing your property, life every year to monsoon rains. In our country, if you look at Bihar, that river Kosi is considered to be the sorrow of Bihar. Then even Brahmaputra and Ghagra, they all break their banks. and flood the lowland areas. People choose to live on uplands because they want to prevent damage to house and loss of life. Terraces and levees are dry points, and these are areas of choice for people living in river basins. In tropical countries, people build houses on stilts to protect themselves from floods and harmful organisms. Now, you can see the settlement which is submerged because of flooding. This is then definitely not a highland. Right? This is not an upland. This is low lying area which got submerged due to flood. The fourth important thing is the building material. As in some places you find people use concrete, some places people use stone with cementing material between them. Some places people use mud, often they use thatch, they use wood also, timber also for construction. So whatever building material is easily and economically available in that area, that is primarily used for constructing houses and housings. The building material which is reasonably good quality and well priced determines what is predominantly used for construction. The availability of building materials such as wood or stone near settlements is advantageous. Sandstone is widely used in Rajasthan for doorposts, ceilings, outdoor stairs, etc. because it's easily available, it's not expensive, and it's reasonably strong. And this house is made up of timber. The fifth important thing is the defense or the sense of security you find in that area. People settle down where they feel they are secure. They look for security from instability, burglary and theft, wars and hostility. That is why people usually avoid the border areas. And usually, the border areas between two countries, if the ties between the two countries are not friendly enough, then you find more the military population there. Even an armed policeman just standing there, not doing anything, can stop uh, the wrong type of elements of society from uh, causing mischief. The sixth importance is the level of planning. Now, government acquires land on which developed settlement is constructed, and this is done on land that is not chosen by the villagers themselves. If the villagers avoid the land, if that land is empty, it's not being used for either for their own residence or for agriculture, the government takes that land and develops it in a planned manner. And such settlements, the government provides all facilities which are required for a decent living, like water, shelter, and markets and banks and hospitals and schools, etc. Now, if you look at the canal colonies and ordnance estates, they are examples of this. You find everything that is required for a decent living. Of course, nothing very high-fi, no show-off is there, but they are good settlements. This is an example of such as planned settlement. Even from a height that this photograph was taken, you can see the level of planning. Now, rural settlements can be identified based on certain patterns. The shape and size of a village is influenced by the terrain, the site of the village, the surrounding topography. These three things are the things which are important and they determine the patterns of the rural settlements. So just make sure that you know this. And the classification can be done on setting, the functions, and form or shapes of the settlements. So let's talk about them one by one. On the basis of setting, the villages may be settled on plains, they may be settled on plateaus, they may be in the coastal regions, it may be a forested area, or even a desert or dry or arid area. On the basis of function, they may be farming villages, they may be villages where predominantly fishermen live and work, They may be the villages of the shepherds also, and on the basis of form or shapes, the villages may have different geometric shapes. Like they may be linear or T-shaped, circular, rectangular, star shaped, and so on. Now, the linear is, if usually there's a road or a highway or a railway line or a river or a canal, and you have on either side of that, depending on the topography, depending on the type of land available, you have settlement. So, such settlements which are linear, like a line, they are known as linear pattern. Rectangular pattern, as you can see in this picture, is a rough rectangular. The roads are straight and cut each other at right angles, and such patterns of settlements are usually found in plain areas or if it's a wide valley. Circular patterns, they usually have something of interest in the center. It can be a lake or a tank, or it can be just an open area, what you call a choraha or a village square, and the village is settled around that. So the central part of the village remains open. It may be a playground also. It can be a park, and is that open area is usually used for keeping animals so that they find protection. This picture is not really a village, but it gives you a fair idea of what a circular pattern looks like. Oh, this is the star pattern, and you can see distinctly the pattern of a star. Now, the pattern of star develops uh, where the roads are converging. If there are several roads coming from different direction and converging in the center, and you have houses built along the roads on either side of the roads and between this converging roads, then you have a pattern like this, which is a star like pattern. The pattern can be also T-shaped if two roads are cutting each other at 90 degrees. Y-shaped if the angles are not 90. Cross-shaped where two roads intersect each other at 90 degrees. Now, if there's a river or a highway on the same village, the name of the village is same, but if such a structure or river or highway is passing, or even a railway line is passing right in the middle of the village, you have the same named village on both the sides. This you can see in the suburban areas of Mumbai, for example. You have Ambernath East, you have Ambernath West, you have Thane East, you have Thane West, you have Ghatkopar East and Ghatkopar West. The name of town is same, but even if you okay, Ghatkopar is a part of the city. Now, if you go to Badlapur, again you have uh, Badlapur East and Badlapur West. Although Badlapur is just a village, the railway line is the dividing factor there. We have come to the end of part one of the chapter. Be sure to watch the second chapter, the second part of the same chapter. Give it a thumbs up and wait for the second part. Bye.